Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Praveen Rangnath, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Sumo Logic, and I first want to thank you for joining today's webinar on PCI and regulatory compliance and your log data. For those of you not familiar with Sumo Logic, we're the next-generation machine data analytics company. Our cloud-based service delivers real-time interactive search, analytics, and visualization of all your machine data. Leading global enterprises such as Netflix, Tableau Software, Orange Digital, McGraw-Hill, and Scripps Networks leverage the Sumo Logic service to instantly transform machine data into IT and business insights, and to ensure compliance with regulatory standards. In today's webinar, we'll provide an in-depth look at how a logging infrastructure is critical to compliance with PCI, HIPPA, and other regulatory standards. We will discuss how a logging infrastructure can help with prioritizing specific control areas, ensuring retention for prescribed lengths of time, and guaranteeing rapid response time to auditor requests. Before we begin, however, some quick housekeeping items. We will be recording today's webinar, and we'll send everyone a link to the archive when it is posted to the website. Also, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please ask your questions in the Q&A window of the WebEx. Lastly, if you have any technical difficulty, please send a chat to host and presenters in the chat window of WebEx. That being said, without any further ado, let me introduce today's presenter, Joan Pepin. Joan is the Director of Security at Sumo Logic and is a 15-year information security veteran with expertise in a variety of industries such as healthcare, manufacturing, defense, ISPs, and MSSPs. Her experience spans technical, operational, and management levels of security, allowing her to bring highly technical research expertise to her current interest in security management and strategy. A recognized expert in security policy and lifecycle management, Joan is the inventor of SecureWorks' anomaly detection engine and event linking technologies. Joan, thank you for presenting.
Thanks, Praveen. Hi, everybody. So before we get along to the topic of the day, I want to just introduce myself a little bit, and thanks again, Praveen, for that lovely introduction. Just tell you a little bit about who I am. I've been with Sumo Logic for about 2.5 years now. I'm employee number 11. My responsibility here includes all things security, our customers' data security, our intellectual property security, et cetera, as well as any security features that happen within the product I'm the product owner for. Before here, I spent about 9 years at Dell SecureWorks, where I was Director of Security Research. As Praveen mentioned there, I was the inventor of the anomaly detection engine and event linking technologies, which are used by that company still today. Prior to that, I was technical staff at MIT Lincoln Laboratories, working for the Information Assurance Group, where I worked on projects for NIST, the FAA, the U.S. Air Force, and the NSA. So now I spend a lot of time thinking about compliance in the cloud and how to achieve compliance in the cloud for Sumo Logic and how to help Sumo Logic's customers achieve compliance for their programs as well. So there are a couple of myths of cloud compliance that I want to clear up. Now, all myths tend to be based in reality, so it's not that there's no truth behind these things, but I want to uncover exactly what this is. So one myth is that it's very difficult or even impossible to achieve compliance in the cloud. Also, people believe that there are no compliant cloud service providers, that auditors aren't up to date with cloud technology, and that these regulations, compliance with these regulations is extremely difficult and expensive, particularly for small companies, small and medium businesses, and startups. And while there are kernels of truth that have started all of these rumors, the realities are actually rather different. Achieving compliance in the cloud is actually quite feasible and possible, and there are a number of cloud service providers that have compliance programs that you should be aware of. The difficulty is actually in that people don't understand really very well yet how to achieve these compliance goals in the cloud space. It's not that it's that difficult. In fact, there are a lot of advantages to cloud-based infrastructure that can make your compliance programs easier and less expensive than in traditional data center type environments. It is also true that many standards have not been brought up to date with the cloud technology. However, there are skilled auditors in the field who are very savvy and can help you work through the process. my ultimate goal is to let you know that with proper focus, compliance is not going to kill you. It's not going to be that bad. What it really is going to come down to is working with your auditor to be able to make them understand what it is that you are trying to do, either in the cloud or in your traditional data center environment. And I'm going to focus mostly on the cloud because that's really the interesting area. That's, really where everything's going these days. And I believe that the economics of the cloud are ultimately inevitable and are going to bring us all there. But everything that I'm going to say about compliance programs in general absolutely applies to a hosted environment, if you own your own data center, if you're doing co-location, any of those things. The basic high-level approach and strategy is still going to be the same. So for every area, you're going to have to demonstrate that you have proper controls, and then furthermore, that you actually live by those controls and follow those controls. In order to show your auditor that you live by your policies, so for instance, you have an access management policy, right? You spend some time, you write up a good policy, maybe you pull down a template. If you have a lot of policies to write, by the way, I recommend the sans.org website. They have some really well thought out policies that can help get you started. Obviously, they'll all need to be tailored to your individual organization, but it's a great place to get started. So you have your policies, you have your access control policy, for instance. You do maybe a readiness test with your auditor. They say this looks like a good access control policy. Well, then they come back and they test that you've actually followed your access control policy. So you'll need to provide evidence to that effect. Yep. And in most cases, the easiest evidence, the best evidence that you can provide your auditors are your logs, your access control logs, which will show that you followed your own access control policy. Sumo Logic helps a number of customers, including ourselves, do this for not just access logs, but for a large number of types of logs. And I want to highlight this is that Sumo Logic for over 2 years now has been the first and largest user of our own log management service, which we use to meet a number of compliance objectives. We also have a number of customers who are using our service today in order to meet their compliance objectives. So we're going to discuss that as well. So this is where we can help a lot. We are a centralized log management solution. So for instance, if you're dealing with PCI, and there are a lot of other regulations and standards because it's very clear. I believe, I was almost going to say that it was well written, which would really be a stretch, but it's one of the better written, if not the best written, of the standards that you're going to typically encounter. So it's a good base policy to work from. Generally speaking, with a few tweaks here or there, if you're going to go for something a little more severe like an ISO or a NIST, PCI is still a very good base for you to have. And one of the key components of PCI is Section 10. Section 10 deals directly with your logging infrastructure. It calls out that you need to have centralized logging for your operating system logs, your access control logs, and a number of other types of logs. Sumo Logic is specifically designed to help you meet your Section 10 requirements by being a tamper-proof, access-controlled, real-time log management system. So we scoop those logs up off of the hard drive, encrypt them, store them securely, manage access to those logs, which is also part of Section 10. So this is one of those areas where handling things in the cloud, just like maybe handing off your physical infrastructure to a cloud service provider like Amazon or Rackspace or Microsoft, who are all have various levels of certification, will make your certification process simpler. Handing off your logs to a cloud-based service such as Sumo Logic will make your Section 10 easier. And similarly, like I just mentioned, having cloud service providers who are compliant in these various things and who understand them, can work with you and work with your auditor, can be a big key to your success. So we are proudly hosted in Amazon. Amazon carries a number of certifications and standards, including PCI. We are in the process of completing our PCI program right now, which, working with Amazon and working with our auditor, we're able to use their paperwork for a bunch of sections, for instance, physical security. Amazon manages the physical security, they manage the availability in terms of generators, all those things which are part of the standard. So this is a great way in which compliance in the cloud can be easier. If you choose the right provider, you can simply fold their paperwork into yours. So Sumo can help you a lot with your compliance, just as other cloud providers such as Amazon or Rackspace can help you with other sections of your compliance. Sumo can also help you generate daily exception reports, which is a big part of your audit trail, right? Your logs must be not just collected and managed, but also reviewed on a regular basis for exceptions. I use Sumo Logic personally to look at all of our firewall and IDS exceptions across our entire production environment on an everyday basis. I get exception reports. Additionally, I have up-to-the-minute alerting, within a very short window for anything that I've deemed critical, certain access violations that should never occur. The Sumo Logic service will let me know right away. This also helps me achieve compliance with PCI, SOC, HIPPA, and various other regulations. Another very useful thing that you can do with your logs is help to determine where your gaps are in these standards. If you need to be logging access controls, if a PCI, for instance, has something that says that the file integrity monitoring on your systems, there needs to be a log showing that the file integrity monitoring was initiated. So that's another type of thing where Sumo Logic can help you by collecting all those logs, by making sure that you have those logs that your auditor is going to ask for, and then providing you with a way to easily access and present those logs when the examination or audit occurs. Also, the continuous log management will help you make sure that you meet your compliance objectives and KPIs. You can run continuous query dashboards. You can run daily searches, hourly searches, to make sure that your security performance indicators, access control policies, et cetera, are all within your acceptable parameters for your security policy. So in terms of the audit process itself, I'm going to quickly break it down, and then I'm going to go into each one of these bits in a little bit more depth. But depending on the scope of your audit or examination, there are a few high-level areas of concern. I also discuss briefly policies, right? So that's one thing that you're going to need to have for your auditor to make sure that this is a smooth process, is a lot of policies. You're going to have to ensure that you have a good physical infrastructure and security model. And once again, this is where the cloud can really be your friend. You have to make sure that your OS level security is up to spec, your application level security, your operational processes are a big thing, right? Change management, as well as your business processes, how you hire, how you fire, how you sign NDAs, et cetera. I believe that, these major areas are really a good breakdown of everything that you need to consider. So let's go through them individually. So physical infrastructure and security, as I mentioned, operating in a public cloud provider can really help move you along in this area. Companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Rackspace have gone to great expense to build very secure data centers with physical access controls, biometrics, cameras, those big concrete pillars that keep the trucks from getting too close, the generators, the air conditioners, the raised floors. All of that stuff has not only been done by providers like Amazon, but they've had it examined, they've had it tested, they've had it audited, and they have their paperwork in good order so that you can use that to your advantage. This will also what you want to do, particularly, I have most experience with Amazon. Amazon has a wonderful paper about their best practices and how you can achieve compliance on their platform. Their platform is compliant up to their demarcation point where it becomes your responsibility at the OS layer. And they provide a great guide of best practices of how to operate the Amazon service securely so that your application layer and OS layer will maintain compliance. In this case, the evidence for your audit concerning physical security and all of that is going to fall to your platform as a service provider, to Amazon or Rackspace or Azure or any of those guys. So like I said, your auditor can simply contact them, you get in touch with your sales rep, and you fold that paperwork into your paperwork. And, in a cloud-based scenario, this can be a whole lot of stuff that you do not have to worry about. OS level security, this is typically in a public cloud environment where your demarcation begins, right, where this becomes your responsibility. A big thing is to automate all of your system hardening and security updates. So when my auditor first showed up, one of the first things he wanted to see was the checklist that our sysadmins run through to harden a new box when we bring it up. Now, we don't operate that way. We're a cloud-based company. We are automatically spinning up and spinning down boxes according to load, et cetera. So for us to actually have some 130-point checklist that some poor sysadmin has to sit there and run through every time we bring up a node would really put us out of business. So, thankfully I work with a very savvy company. I was able to explain to them, well, we actually do all this in code through APIs, and we have a hardening program that hardens all of our boxes. We are able to show them that code and have that put in for our control. So this is what I mean about working with an auditor who understands the cloud, who's worked with companies like Amazon, et cetera, before. You want to do some basic things at your OS level, right? You want to harden it and be able to show how you're hardening it, follow up some best practices. There's some great stuff on the web out there about OS hardening, particularly for Linux, is a pretty well understood problem at this point. Some basic things that you absolutely want to run, particularly if you're in a cloud environment, file integrity checkers on every node. We run host intrusion detection systems on every node, as well as network intrusion detection systems at network choke points. We run host firewalls on every node, and of course we run very verbose access logging on everything. We collect and centrally manage all of those logs using our own service, Sumo Logic. Report on those exceptions daily so that you can evidence to your auditor that these are being reviewed, that someone is looking at these on a daily basis and following up on anything that might be wrong. And have certain exceptions, things that you know absolutely should not happen, sent to you for immediate escalation and response. And that's another thing that Sumo Logic can provide and that we provide for other customers, including ourselves. And then, of course, the next layer that's going to fall to your responsibility is going to be your application level security. This is where testing comes in a lot. There is a call in a lot of standards and specifications to run a web application firewall. Web application firewalls are still, in my opinion, a relatively immature and nascent technology, and in the cloud they can be, even more so. However, it is also, the market is at a point where they're not that difficult to set up and operate and manage. So for your compliance, you might very well want to look into a web application firewall. For cloud-based web application firewalls, this was an area where just a couple of years ago, there wasn't a whole lot. If you were operating in Amazon or Rackspace, there wasn't a lot that you could do for a WAF. However, now that has changed. There are a number of companies who are offering cloud-based web application firewalls, including Neustar, VeriSign, and Akamai, just to name a three in an agnostic sort of fashion. Continuous testing will help you a lot in application-level security as well. PCI looks for this a lot. We do quarterly scanning through an ASV in order to ensure that we're compliant from that perspective, and we can show that we look for major vulnerabilities in our application every quarter. Additionally, we do an annual deep dive penetration test, which allows us to evidence to our auditor that we've taken very seriously the application level security at a deep level, and that we've opened tickets to remediate any issues that our penetration testers might have found, and that we do that in a timely manner. We also have integrated a third-party security scanner into our cloud platform so that we automatically scan new devices and services when we bring them up at Amazon. A key component to compliance at the application layer is to encrypt everything, right? I mean, it's just that simple. Encrypt it in transit and encrypt it at rest. Encryption is one of the areas where compliance can get tricky if you're trying to conform to multiple standards. In many cases, you'll find that standards are very similar, and if you comply to one, it's very simple to comply to 2, 3, even 4 more. However, encryption is a particular area where the standards have some very different things to say. Anything coming down from the U.S. government, NIST and FedRAMP and those types of standards are very particular about the encryption algorithms they use, whereas some of the private and more corporate types of standards and the European standards are more likely to use different suites entirely. This is an area that we've tackled by using them all. We often are in a position where we will layer and wrap our encryption so that we can be compliant to different standards. This also increases our security as we have multiple layers of encryption. So while that can add a bit of complexity in multi-compliance scenarios, it also can add a good layer of security for you and your customers. Limit and audit access, right? So access logs here are very important. Limit and audit access to your application into sensitive areas of your application, for instance, where credentials or keys might be kept. And once again, set up daily exception reports and real-time alerts for things that you know might be a problem in this environment. So, and once again, you can show your auditor that you are up to date with the things that are happening in your security infrastructure. Operational and business processes are an area where the security professional, still absolutely has some input, but this is also going to require working cross-functionally, often with your operations team. Change management is a big part of this. Being able to prove separation of duties, least privilege, and to be able to show that changes made to your production environment, to the service that you're having certified or audited, have been managed. Those changes were approved by somebody. Those changes had rollback methods. There were documentation. You're able to show who changed what, when they changed it, and who approved it, right? Once again, logs here can be very helpful. Access control audits. Who has access to what and why? Once again, separation of duties and least privilege, two very important concepts. Onboarding and offboarding. We use on the order of 20 different cloud services here at Sumo Logic. And so when we bring on a new employee or when an employee decides to move on, there is a lot that needs to be done in order to ensure that their access is properly granted and properly revoked. So this is one piece of documentation that you want to have together very well and very well thought out, and be able to show your auditor that you follow that policy every time someone is hired and every time somebody is terminated. In the case of PCI, you also are encouraged to run background checks, reference checks, etc. So having a documented process around this, which you can show that you have followed repeatedly, in every case, is a key to making this a success. So those are the major points in achieving compliance in the cloud. And now I would like to open up to any questions from the audience.
Okay, great. We do have one question that's come in. Actually, several that have come in. One is here is to please talk about key rotation. What drives the frequency of rotations?
So our policy around this, our thought around this is to rotate keys as frequently as is practical. So there are, for different standards, there are going to be maybe some specifics, and in a lot of cases there are generalities. It'll say that your keys must be rotated regularly, right? That's sort of common language. That there must be a regular schedule. So we rotate our customer keys every 24 hours. What we do is actually we keep a key ring. So say a customer has 30 days of data with us. We will maintain in our secure key ring 30 keys for them, each corresponding to one 24-hour period of data. This seems to be among the better key rotation schemes that we've encountered. It does not require re-encryption of data, which allows things to be performant, but also ensures that were a key to somehow be exposed, it would greatly limit the amount of data that could potentially be exposed by that.
Okay, great. Another question has come in as to what certifications does Sumo Logic have?
So we currently carry a SOC 2 certification, which we are in the middle of recertifying right now. We carry an attestation of HIPAA compliance, which our auditor has basically, assisted us in attesting that we are compliant with HIPAA. In addition to just the attestation of compliance, we have actually executed a BAA, I believe maybe now 2, with our customers. So we are, currently in business associate agreements with HIPAA customers. We are in the process of doing our PCI ROC. We are going for a PCI Service Provider Level 2 certification, which is something that we are currently in process with.
Okay. We have one more question here. And as a reminder to folks, please do send questions to the Q&A window of WebEx. The question here is, what customers do you have currently that are using Sumo Logic to manage security and compliance requirements?
Oh, okay. So there are two that I know that I can talk about. We have several. Sometimes, customers, for security reasons, might not want their names used, but there are two that I can certainly talk about. We have a customer called Swipely, and we have another customer called Apogee that we help both of those customers achieve their PCI compliance, both with Section 10 and with bits of other sections, for instance, firewall and IDS monitoring, those reports that I mentioned, by having those run and reviewed on a regular basis. So Section 10 and a few other sections as well for those two customers, and there are some more that I'm just not at liberty to mention.
Another question has come in as to what security sources do you frequent?
So I am a subscriber to an threat intelligence service. I don't necessarily want to give them any free advertising, but there are a number of threat intelligence services out there on the market. Also, SANS and the Internet Storm Center is a great resource, as well as lists like FIRST, et cetera. I do rely a lot on my threat intelligence service. If that's something that you can afford to do, that's within your budget, I highly recommend outsourcing that type of thing when you can get it. There's so much information out there. There's so many websites, a lot of them good and a lot of them not. That if you have the budget, I really do recommend letting people like that used to be myself, who do intelligence full time, sift that out for you. Another question has come in. Do Sumo Logic intend to offer security dashboard suites? Absolutely, absolutely. And that's actually something that we can work with you on a one-on basis right now. I don't know as we do have some pre-canned content. And that's something that if you signed up for a Sumo Logic free or a free trial, or if you're a paid customer, that our support team and sales engineering team can help you with. We have some pre-canned content for things like the Snort IDS, and beyond that, we can certainly help you customize security dashboards and KPI reports. And that's also something that is on our roadmap to do more and more of upfront and canned. So another question is coming, do we have customers within the U.S. government community, and how are they utilizing the solution? So we are not currently signed with any government customers. We are in conversations with a number of them, and one of our customers has a number of government customers that we are working to partner with and share our services. So we do not currently have any contracts, but we do service other government contractors, and there are a couple of agencies that we are currently in discussions with. We have also begun seriously looking into a FedRAMP compliance program, which would allow us to much better serve that market.
Okay, so some more questions are coming in here. Question here, we're not on the cloud, but with host-based firewall and other encryptions, do you experience a degradation in performance of the application?
No. So that could very well be to our cloud-based infrastructure. We have a very large, scalable and elastic infrastructure. But in general, at this point, encryption overhead is really not what it used to be. Encryption overhead, bandwidth concerns, a lot of these things that were serious issues 5-10 years ago, Moore's Law has really started to help with. So no, the short answer is no. We don't notice any performance degradation for doing our encryption, for doing our host level firewalls. Also host level firewalls are sort of the last peel of the onion, right? We have Amazon security groups, we have network level firewalls, and then finally down at that last layer we have the host level firewall. So that packet filter is actually not seeing a huge number of packets per second.
And I guess a related question to that is, do you encrypt all sensitive data in MySQL? And if so, how do you obfuscate sensitive fields without seeing performance compromises?
So we do not use any SQL anywhere in our product. We are a NoSQL environment. We use a number of column store style databases and a graph database, but we don't have any SQL. Our data is encrypted on multiple layers within the database, as well as we use encrypted hard drives, encrypted spindles, for which the keys are kept in memory in our nodes and are lost when the nodes are rebooted. So once that data is gone, it's gone. So once again, there's really not much in the way of performance compromise there because we've baked that into our base system, right? One of our base systems needs to be able to operate with an encrypted hard drive and operate on encrypted data. And so that's really just part of our cost of doing business and is baked right in from the beginning. I see another question about what host-based IDS that we use. We use two different types of host-level IDS. We use the SNORT intrusion detection system in host mode, and we also use a file integrity monitor called OSSEC. OSSEC has some other things that it does as well, but we primarily use it for file integrity monitoring. Do we have some more?
Yeah, just I guess the last question that's come in is about the sharing of the presentation, and yes, we will be sending an archive of this entire webinar out once we have the recording completed and posted on the website. So everyone will be getting a recording of the archive with the presentation as well. That being said, that looks like that's all of our questions. So again, thank you, Joan, for the time. It was an excellent presentation. I know very informative. And thank you all for attending. Really appreciate your time and hope it was informative to you as well. Please feel free to follow up with us with any questions. You can email webinars@sumologic.com, or if you're an existing customer, feel free to contact your local sales representative. Thank you again, and please everyone have a great rest of the day.